Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. I have been wanting to discuss this horrific murder, and that's what it is. It's an attack and a murder of an innocent 23-year-old. Her name is Iryna and Zarutska. She initially is from Ukraine. She came here in 2022, and I'm going to go through a bit of what her family has had to say about her once I get through the horrible incident that happened on the Charlotte, North Carolina subway last month in August. For some reason, we didn't hear about this for, it seemed like a couple of weeks. And yes, the video is graphic, even when it is edited and blurred to some extent. So I am going to make sure I preface to say I am going to play the video, and discretion is advised for sure. If this is going to trigger you or bother you in any way, you can fast forward to the end of that, and then I'm going to discuss the suspect, Brown Jr., what we have learned thus far about him, and he's got quite a past with law enforcement. And then I want to close it out talking about Iryna, because she is the one who is the victim of this unprovoked attack. Again, I want to state this is graphic, and I know we are following true crime here, but this is the moments before and after this horrible attack on Iryna. And this is the suspect, the attacker in the red hoodie. So watch him. He's the one who attacks her not long after she gets on the train.
This stop is Stanley Park Station. Please exit right.
Now this is Iryna getting on and sitting down. She's got her earphones in, her earbuds, and looking at her phone. Nothing, no interaction with the suspect.
Please stand clear. Doors are closing. Train is about to move. Boulevard Station. Please exit right.
They're saying he's bleeding really bad, and he said, "I stabbed that girl, yo." And he also says, "I stabbed that white girl. I got that white girl." And if you watch, it takes quite some time for people to actually respond to her. She's way in the back at this point. But when you see the gentleman running, you'll see him running toward the back. It just seems like the people around her just did not have a response. It's very strange.
This stop is East West Boulevard Station. Please exit right.
Now there are other videos out there that are much more graphic even than this. This was even toned down. And the photos we have seen of Iryna, that look of terror on her face, I don't think I'm ever going to forget that look on her face for quite some time. He is claiming the voices talk to him. He's got mental problems. That's his story. That's Decarlos Brown Jr.'s reason that he stabbed her to death. And he doesn't know why. He has no relationship with her. He doesn't know her. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And to me, that's not enough of an excuse. It's not. It is disgusting. Okay, so again, this suspect in the red hoodie, his name is Decarlos Brown Jr. In total, Brown has been arrested 14 times in his life. 14 times. There are many mugshots of Decarlos on record. At 22 years old, he was charged in at least 4 separate instances of shoplifting, larceny, breaking and entering, and felony conspiracy. Court records showed that he had been convicted of all charges besides the felony conspiracy. Less than a year later, Decarlos Brown Jr. robbed a man of his phone and $450 at gunpoint. That landed him in prison after reaching a plea deal. So that is the moment that he ended up behind bars for a while. Following his nearly 6-year prison sentence, Decarlos Brown Jr. was arrested again this past January of 2025, after placing a 911 call complaining of man-made materials being inserted into his body by the government. So he believed he had some sort of implant, something inside of him. Yeah. His mother and his sister, they say that he has struggled with mental illness for years after being released from prison, after that 6-year prison stint, and he claimed there was a material in his body that controlled him. So again, once he got out of prison, he believed that something was implanted in his body, something was going on. Brown's mother, her name is Michelle DeWitt. She has stated that her son was diagnosed with schizophrenia after his time in prison, and he was different. Now, we all know that prison can make you different. We hear about that all the time, but it seems like it made Decarlos Brown Jr., it made him go really, really crazy. While living with his mother, Decarlos began showing violent behavior. He began slamming doors, yelling in her face. He would also walk around the home and talk to himself. Now, we all do talk to ourselves sometimes. We mumble, we do that. But according to his mom, this was very, very different. DeWitt said her son had been diagnosed with the schizophrenia, like we said, and had been given medication, but he refused to take it. You can't feel better, you can't get better if you don't take your medication. And mental illness does require medication. So he wasn't taking his medication, and that was a big problem. Decarlos' mother said she grew increasingly concerned about the safety for herself and her husband with Brown living in the house, so she took him to a mental health hospital. She said the hospital told her they did not have enough room to admit her son, and because he wasn't threatening to hurt himself, they couldn't take him in. She took him to a mental health institution, hospital, and said, listen, my son is sick, he needs help, but, well, we don't have enough room and he's not threatening to unalive himself, so sorry, we can't help you, ma'am. That's basically what she was told. So she had to leave with no option but to go to court, where she filed a petition with a magistrate for her son to get help. As a result of that petition, a mental health facility did keep Brown Jr. for 14 days, for just 2 weeks. And that's not enough for serious mental illness. And then eventually they released him after those 14 days, and he came back to live with her and her husband. She could not live with him any longer. Like I said, she was still fearful for her life, like she stated. So she felt she had no other choices, so she dropped him off at a local shelter. And in recent months, before this attack on the subway, DeWitt said that she had seen her son on a street, walking up and down, and her younger daughter would see him riding the bus. So Mom and the family felt awful for Decarlos, but they were scared of him, and the mental health facilities that they asked for help, they helped him for this small period of time, and then they let him back out. So, they had no idea what to do. In audio recordings of a conversation between Brown and his sister several days after his arrest, so we're talking about after he brutally stabbed Iryna, because he was caught pretty quickly after that. Unfortunately, that was not going to help Iryna. He maintained that he had that material that was in his body that caused him to attack Iryna Zarutska. So he told her, because something was in his body, it caused him to attack this innocent 23-year-old girl. That's what he told his sister. And he has been quoted saying to his sister, make sure it was me that did it, not the material. And I'm telling you, the material did it. That's what he told his sister, according to the recordings. So he believes, it almost makes me feel like it's like one of those, I was abducted by aliens, and I know that sounds very X-Filesy and all that, but it's almost as if he's saying the government took me, an alien took me, they implanted this stuff in my body, and it drove me crazy, and I wasn't myself because of this, and this thing, this implant, whatever material, whatever it is, caused me to do things I didn't know I could do or did. The suspect can be heard telling his sister that he did not even know the lady at all. So again, he had no idea who Iryna was. She just got on the train, on that subway, sat down, sadly in the worst possible place, and she became his victim. I never said one word to this lady at all. He told his sister, that's scary, ain't it? So, like, why would somebody stab somebody for no reason? He can be heard telling his sister. So, I'm guessing at this point he is on medication because he's in jail. So, he's having a hard time understanding that he did this to this woman that he had no idea who she was. Now, that doesn't change the fact that he's a murderer now. But this is definitely a mental illness problem. But again, that does not excuse what he did at all. And he had quite the history, like I stated at the beginning. So he's not at all a stranger to law enforcement, to prison. But he is claiming that due to his 6 years in prison from his previous crimes, that drove him crazy. That's basically what he's claiming at this point. But that's my opinion. That's not going to help him when it comes down to it. But it is a sad, sad thing. But yeah, I know that President Trump has been stating that he wants the death penalty sought for the death of Iryna, and I agree. It doesn't make a difference to me if he was mentally unstable, wasn't on medication, wasn't getting the help that he needed. And I don't blame his mother or his family, but at the same time, I don't know. It's a very, very difficult situation to respond to. But again, we have these shooters and these people who kill all the time. They go shoot up these schools. And look at the kid who just assassinated Charlie Kirk. Is he going to claim mental illness? A lot of them do. But that does not change the fact that they took another person's life. All right, and this is the Charlotte Observer. I came across this when I was looking for information on Iryna Zarutska. And I do apologize. I tried to learn to pronounce her first name. It is Iryna. Apparently there's at least 3 ways to pronounce her first name. Her last name's a little bit more, complicated. But if you guys know how to pronounce it, please let me know in the comments. I'm not above being corrected. But I wanted to go through a little bit of what her family has had to say about her. And there's a beautiful picture of her right there. And they want the focus to be on her and how her life was so wonderful. And, cut horribly short, obviously. So, again, they went through and they spoke with the Charlotte Observer. What I wanted to read was this portion right here. I will link to this article if you would like to go take a look at it on the Charlotte Observer's website. This is where her dad talks about the difficult decision for her to leave Ukraine. Iryna almost decided to remain in Ukraine with her father, who had no choice but to stay. So when they were trying to come to the United States, during the whole thing, it mentioned it before this, due to his age and his, all that, he was not permitted to go. So it would be her, her mother and her brother, and also I believe and her younger sister. So there would have been 4 of them. As was the case for scores of Ukrainians in Kiev, life became fraught for the Zarutskas after the war with Russia broke out and routine bombings of the capital began. For months they lived in a tightly quartered bomb shelter, risking only occasional visits back to their apartment, primarily just to make sure it hadn't been disturbed, or worse, destroyed. Meanwhile, in the United States, extended family members were trying to raise the money and lay the groundwork via the Department of Homeland Security's United for Ukraine program to get Iryna, her mother Anna, her younger sister Val, and her younger brother Bogdan around the globe to Huntersville, where Scott and Valeria Haskell could host them. So they were trying to get at least the 4 of them to get safety and come here, to the United States, to the land of promise, which is, so they were working on that. And again, it's just sad that the father couldn't come with them as well. In any event, the family patriarch Stas would be unable to join them due to mandatory conscription requirements that forbid Ukrainian men between the ages of 18 to 60 from leaving the country. And Iryna, who was extraordinarily close to her father and at the time already an adult, capable of making the decision herself, initially was set on resisting a move. So he couldn't leave because of his age and because he was a male. And she thought about staying with her dad. And through this horrible conflict that they had, this war with Russia, I know you guys remember, you couldn't avoid seeing it, on TV or in the news. But ultimately, her mother was able to convince Iryna that it wasn't safe for her in Kiev. And so she went. The 4 fled in August 2022, first by a ground transport to Warsaw in Poland, then by getting onto a plane bound for the United States. So, how exciting and scary would that be? This family, obviously, they were, Ukrainian, they are Ukrainian, and everyone but the father was allowed to come. And he's still there. He's not allowed to come over here. So no, he was not allowed to go to his daughter's funeral. They mentioned that in this article as well. None of the family had ever flown before or even been outside of their home country at all. They didn't speak English. They arrived at the Charlotte airport feeling understandably a mixture of relief, excitement, and fear. And we can imagine that, but how, I don't think we could ever really relate to that. And how scary, but also, like I said, it's exciting, but it's also very, very scary. But the Haskells and their close-knit community in Huntersville were ready to make them feel welcome. Valeria was able to do any translating, and with the help from furniture donated by neighbors, the Haskells converted their 3-bedroom house into a 5-bedroom house to accommodate the Zarutskas along with themselves, Valeria's adult daughter, and 3 dogs. It was, as Scott describes it, kind of like the Brady Bunch here. So they were welcomed with open arms by their extended family, and they made do. And in this bunch, Iryna played the role of the popular eldest sister, confident, beautiful, noble, and perhaps above all else, full of ambition. So now she's here in the United States, and there's a picture of her right there. She's in the United States, and she's thinking, okay, maybe I can get a new start. She's young, and, they followed the rules. They got here legally through, Homeland Security. And she's thinking, maybe I can start anew here in the United States. She knew more people here than I did. Both Iryna and her mom were eager to get a work permit as soon as possible. They wanted to get acclimated. They wanted some income. They also just wanted to feel useful. So they didn't come over here thinking they were just going to sit around and leech off of this extended family or leech off of this country. They wanted to get to work. They wanted to get some money of their own, and start making themselves a future. While waiting for that months-long process to play out, a neighbor got wind that Iryna was taking English lessons through the Ronan Cabarrus Community College, but was doing all of her coursework on her iPhone. So the neighbor donated a couple of computers to the family, and Iryna settled into a much more efficient learning routine. That is amazing. Can you imagine trying to do, learn a new language? First of all, learning a new language is hard, but doing it on your phone? Wow. Then once their permits were approved, Iryna and Anna both were able to land jobs working in housekeeping at a retirement community a little over a mile from the Haskell's home. So yeah, they had to wait that month, but they immediately, once their permits came in, they immediately got work. Neither was anywhere close to having a driver's license at that point, and at first they commuted on foot. That concept actually wasn't at all foreign to them. Back in Kyiv, like the majority of citizens, the family used public transportation to get virtually everywhere and didn't own a car. But one day while Scott was driving his, he spotted Iryna and Anna walking home, and after picking them up, his niece asked him, "Is there a better way?" And there was. He wound up giving Anna his bicycle and bought a second one for Iryna from a neighbor at a yard sale. After that, they rode their bikes to work every day. Iryna's world grew bigger gradually from there. Toward the end of 2023, she moved on to a job at a sandwich shop in Huntersville, thinking it would bring her a little closer to her love of culinary arts. Her home-cooked specialties, Scott says, included kaletti, I'm going to butcher all these names, guys, so pyroshki and borscht, recipes she learned from her mom. Obviously all Ukrainian recipes. She was stockpiling money from her real jobs, but also from odd ones she did around the neighborhood. When someone would post on the community Facebook page about needing a dog sitter or a babysitter, Valeria would offer to connect the person with her niece. Iryna also was a creative spirit who had an art and restoration degree from Synergy College in Kyiv, and at one point was hired by a neighbor to paint a collection of pastel decorations on the walls inside her home. Between all that and the regular excursions she took along its sidewalks and walking trails, sometimes with all three of the Haskell's dogs on leads, but most often with her favorite, a Labrador mix named Teddy, she was a warm, friendly fixture in the neighborhood. I mean, she knew more people in my neighborhood than I did, Scott says, and she made an impression. Everyone seemed not to simply like her, but to absolutely adore her. The same rule applied in her growing social circles. She made friends both in her native language, through the local Ukrainian community, as well as the tongue she was trying to learn as fast as possible. Adeptly using translation tools on her phone to do what she could do to forge bonds with English and Spanish-speaking co-workers. She was also gradually trying to explore her adopted home country, making trips with her new friends to Myrtle Beach here to the mountains with family there. At the same time, Iryna was also a notorious homebody who often seemed happiest just spending time with family or curling up on the couch or her bed with her sketchbook. She could also be a champion sleeper when she wanted to be. Sometimes I didn't even know she was at the house because she was in bed, Scott said. She'd emerge from her room at noon on occasion and he'd be like, "Where did you come from? Thought you were at work." She just felt very, very safe here at home. And there's another picture of her. And there's a cat. It says, that's the Haskell's late family cat, Willow. It says she became a huge animal lover after coming to the United States and eventually expressed interest in a career as a vet assistant. So much was taken away from this young girl. So much. In the spring of 2024, Anna and the two younger kids moved out of the Haskell's house and into their own home to give them all a little more space. Iryna stayed with her aunt and uncle, though, primarily because it was an easy bike ride to her job at the sandwich shop. Over the next year, Iryna and Valeria, who hadn't seen each other in 15 years prior to Iryna's family coming to America, became closer and closer. Sometimes they would sit on the porch for hours just talking about life, about dreams. And those dreams, Iryna saw herself turning her love of animals into a career as a veterinary assistant, envisioned buying a house of her own near her family, visualized traveling around the world, and imagined turning the biggest room she could into a studio where she could draw and sculpt and pour her heart into art inspired by all the places she had visited. And in her pursuit of those dreams, Scott served as a surrogate father even when they had to rely heavily on Google Translate to communicate. He was her problem solver, her guidance counselor, her personal chauffeur when he could swing it, and briefly, before passing the responsibility along to her boyfriend, her driving instructor. See, this girl, she came here. I mean, that's what, I imagine our ancestors thought, right? The land of promise, the United States, of America. Then in May of this year, as she and Valeria both unsuccessfully fought back tears, Iryna moved out to live with her boyfriend in an apartment right off the light rail's 36th Street station in Noda. Whatever fresh homesickness she may have felt, though, Iryna was excited to be drawing closer to her dream. Her new neighborhood was brimming with creative energy, with eclectic art, with sumptuous food. Being on the light rail opened up her world even more, and she got a new job as a cashier at Zeppedy's Pizzeria, a dozen stops down the line in Loso. In relatively short order, she was promoted to line cook. She was definitely a go-getter, guys. Meanwhile, she'd saved enough to start planning a big trip to Miami with her boyfriend, but much more significantly, she'd recently used her savings to buy the first car of anyone in her family, an older model Cadillac that her boyfriend was teaching her how to drive. About a week before she was killed, her uncle texted Iryna to ask how she was doing. Her reply brimmed with enthusiasm. "Everything is great," she wrote. "In October, I have an appointment for the first time to pass the driving test. I'm very excited about it. Soon I'll be able to come visit you and Valeria on my own. I miss you guys so much." "That's awesome news," Scott replied. "Very proud of you." "Thank you," Iryna said. "Without your help, I would not have been able to achieve this. I'm very grateful to you for helping me with this." Scott sent this back. "Glad to help, but you did it." It's the last exchange they would ever have. And how will Iryna Zarutska, how will she be remembered? How will Iryna be remembered? Iryna's father, still bound by conscription laws, could only watch her memorial service through pixels. That's so sad. During her funeral, Anna got on the video call with her husband Stas and held up the phone so he can see Iryna laying in her open casket before the mass of friends and family arrived. Anna stayed on the call with him for the duration, and through tears he got a glimpse of the impact Iryna and her mother had made in America. A prime example, the retirement community that gave Iryna her first job, ferried residents who remembered Iryna or who know Anna, she still works there, to Jane's funeral home by the dozens. Shuttle busload after shuttle busload. In all, more than 100 people came through to pay their respects, the family estimates. The Embassy of Ukraine reached out to the family to offer their own condolences, in addition to assistance with bringing Iryna's remains back to Kyiv. But Anna declined. Iryna loved the United States, Scott says, in expressing her mother's thinking. The last 3 years were really the best years of her life. She was very, very happy here. This is where she wanted to be. And so, at her mother's directive, we buried her here. So she's buried here in the United States. The family is still trying to decide what to engrave on her headstone. Perhaps a rendering of one of Iryna's favorite tattoos, or maybe something inspired by artwork left in her old room at her aunts and uncles. A sketch of an animal, or a flower, or some other artistic flourish, all of which is being left untouched until 40 days after her passing, per their cultural tradition. Whatever it is, they hope to keep the site of her grave as private as they can. As far as what the public can see, they've come to realize there's not much they can control. all they can hope for is that time will start to heal them again. And if there's an image of Iryna that endures, it's one of her smiling. I don't usually read articles like that straight out, but that was extremely well done by the Charlotte Observer. And again, I'm going to link it in the information of this video, so please do check it out. It was very, very well done. And Iryna, I hope that she can be remembered by so many in this way. And I know I appreciate her family sharing some of this information, some of this about her with those of us that have just started to follow this horrible tragedy that happened, this horrific murder that took place last month. All we can do now is keep her at the forefront, because it's about justice for her. It's about justice for Iryna. She came here fearful, but also excited for what America could give her, for her dreams. And her dreams were abruptly shattered by this man who decided to take her life. For what? He's telling his family that he doesn't remember, he doesn't know. It's because of this material in his body. So really, he doesn't have a reason. He just attacked this beautiful 23-year-old for no reason. So I pray for this family. Hopefully they can get this justice, because I know that not only the president, but I'm hopeful that the district attorney's office, that they are going to prosecute this man to the fullest extent. And he should never see the light of day again. It doesn't matter that this was a mental breakdown, or he thought somebody was speaking to him. It doesn't matter. He took out a knife and he took her life. And again, I want to remember her for these photos, for these smiling, these beautiful photos, and not for that horrific image of her, the fear you could see in her eyes and her face, knowing that she was just attacked, and probably knowing that her life was about to be over. All right, guys. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and most of all, stay safe.